Hi, my name is Damian Mullins, and welcome to my video about an important topic in the economy. Today we're going to talk about GDP and GNP. What is GDP, you ask, or GNP? By the end of today's video, you will see the importance of both of these statistics in our economy. Let's start with GDP. Gross Domestic Product, also known as GDP, is the total value measured in money of all final goods and services produced within the boundaries of a single country over a certain period of time, typically over a quarter or a year. It served as a measure includes all of the nation's overall economic activity and health. It also reflects the output generated by all individuals, businesses, government entities operating within the country. It includes everyone regardless of the nationality of the producers. GDP includes consumption, which is how much consumers purchase. Investment, which is how much our resources we put into our economy. Government spending, and net exports, which are things we send to other countries. Exports minus imports. By showing the value in market prices, GDP tells us both quantity and economic significance of production. This means simply that it's expressing to us how much we are producing and what it looks like to our consumers and in the profits we make. GDP is a popular tool by policymakers, economists, and analysts. They use this primarily to monitor growth, compare economic performance across countries, and guide fiscal and monetary decision-making. Let's give a real-life idea of GDP at work. Imagine the household consumption, which includes housing, basic needs, and fund for the entire nation, is $500 billion per year. Business investment for the nation, which includes things like equipment, buildings, etc., is $200 billion. And the government of that small nation spends $300 billion on all its expenses, which would include things like salaries, road building, police, schools, etc. Then our small nation has economic activity with the rest of the world. For example, we have exports such as cars, alcohol, or coffee, which totals $100 billion. Then our nation would purchase imports such as electronics or oil, which would total $150 billion. The nation would subtract its expenses on imports from the amount of it profits on exports, which would be $50 billion. Now we find GDP. When you add all these numbers together, consumer, government, business, import / export difference, that would equal $950 billion. What does this number tell us? This tells us that they created $950 billion worth of final goods and services in that year. Now analysts can use that number to compare it to other years or other nations and figure out if the economy is expanding or contracting, improving or stagnant. Now that we have an understanding of GDP and how it is calculated, let's move on to another important way to analyze our economy, GNP. GNP is how much money a nation's citizens and businesses are generating, period. It doesn't matter where it's being generated across the globe, as long as it's a business individual from a certain country. You live in a country called GDP land. Serena lives in GDP land. She runs a clothing factory in another country. That factory makes $2 million a year. Owen also lives in GDP land. He works a remote job for a company in another country. He makes $50,000 a year. There is a car manufacturing plant located in GDP land that is owned by a foreign country. That factory makes $3 million a year selling cars to GDP land residents. So the $3 million that is generated by the car company doesn't count toward our calculation because the money goes to a foreign country. Therefore, GDP land GNP is calculated by adding together the citizens' earning and their business no matter where they are located, and you would subtract the earnings of any foreign business even though it is operated in GDP land. GDP $2 million, GNP $2 million from Serena's clothing company, plus $50,000 from Owen's salary working abroad, equals $2,050,000. GNP and GDP are both great measurements of economic performance, but they count different things. For example, gross domestic product, or GDP, counts all goods and services produced by any business operating within the United States regardless of who owns them. So if a Japanese car manufacturer is making cars in its factory in America, that counts towards American GDP. It counts because the company is producing within American borders. GDP, the numbers we come up with for it, is about the location of the production. Gross national product, or GNP, counts the goods and services produced by American citizens and American-based companies, no matter where they're located. For example, a Ford factory operating in Japan would count towards the U.S. GNP. Basically, GNP counts any American citizen or American company that is producing, regardless of their location that they are producing in. GNP cares about who is producing and what and how much instead of where it is produced. Why does GDP matter to marketers? GDP matters to marketers because it gives them insight into which business can operate at various times and when new products should be introduced. If a country's GDP is high and it seems to be growing, marketers can adjust pricing and available goods to appeal to the consumer that has money available to spend. If the GDP is not growing, they can adjust the proper pricing and make other decisions about marketing to appeal to the current consumer. Why does GNP matter to marketers? GNP is helpful to marketers because it provides an understanding beyond just out our own country's needs and production. For example, for countries operate abroad, it gives a sense of how an economy impacts the rest of the world. Once needs are met in your home nation, it is a good measure of how much some individual or business would be able to benefit in a global economy. In conclusion, GDP tells marketers about the economic activity taking place by all businesses and individuals within a nation's borders to help businesses function their own nation's marketplace, while GNP can give marketers insight into how valuable a nation's consumers can be to make judgments about opportunities in the global market. Therefore, both GDP and GNP can help marketers offer educated projections and help them create expansion. Thank you for watching my video, and hopefully you have a better understanding of these economic tools.